Hello everybody, this is Aykut from systemcraftsman.com. In the previous videos, we talked about common topic actions as an introduction to Strimzi Kafka CLI, using console consumer and producers of it, setting up TLS authentication, and simple ACL authorization using Strimzi Kafka CLI. In today's video, I will show you how to easily configure Kafka topics, users, and brokers like you used to do with the native Kafka commands on Strimzi using Strimzi Kafka CLI. So come on, join me, and please don't forget to like the video and subscribe my channel if you like it. Strimzi Kafka CLI enables users to describe, create, delete configurations of topics, users, and brokers, like you did with the native apache-kafka commands. While kfk configs command can be used to change the configuration of these three entities, one can change relevant entities configuration by using the following as well, like kfk topics -- config, or if it is user, it will be kfk users quota in this case, because only configuration that will be changed by also kfk configs for users will be quota. The authentication configuration is something different. It's handled in a different way. And for the clusters, for the brokers, it's kfk clusters -- config, just like the same with the topics. So let's start with the topics. So let me first show you that we have a current pre-installed Kafka cluster. I'm using OpenShift, and on this OpenShift I have a namespace called Kafka. And in this Kafka namespace we have a Kafka cluster called my cluster, and we have three Kafka brokers and three Zookeeper nodes in this cluster. So let's see that kfk, if we have any topics yet. So it will be kfk topics list -n Kafka -c my cluster. I have no current topics yet, so I will create one. I will just copy and paste one of my commands. As you can watch from the legacy previous videos of Strimzi Kafka CLI, you can easily create a topic like this. kfk topics create, the topic's name. I'm using a topic called my topic with 12 partitions and 3 replication factor. So let's create this. Okay, so let's describe this topic's configuration. So in order to describe it, we have two options. The first option is to use the describe without any native flag. So we can add a native flag here. I will show it to you in a minute. But first, let's use this. So it's the describe command with the entity type topics and entity name, the topic's name, my topic. Just like the same with the native Kafka command line interface. So when we run this, it will automatically shows us the custom resource of the my topic. So and as you can see, we can see the configuration for this topic itself. So let's do another thing. Let's use this command with native flag, and it will return the topic configuration natively. As you can see, we have a segment bytes and retention milliseconds, just like the previous one. Here it is. So what about adding a configuration? In order to add a configuration, we will use kafka configs alter command. So we will use an add config parameter. So let's say that we want to add a min in-sync replica configuration, min in-sync replicas configuration, and let's say that we want to set it as 3. We want our minimum in-sync replicas as 3. And we have to define an entity type, which will be topic, and an entity name, which will be my topic. My entity type should be topics. So I will set namespace and my cluster. So let's add this config. Okay, it says that my topic is configured. So let's check it with the native describe command of ours. First, let's check with this. As you can see, we have the min in-sync replicas here. So let's check it with the native flag if we have the dynamic configuration in the topic or not. Yeah, as you can see, we have this min in-sync replicas, which as default 1, but we have it, we just set it as 3. So now let's add 2 configs. How we can add 2 configs? In this case, it's the same command, but we have in the add config part, just like the native Kafka binary commands, I mean the shell commands, you have to set your configurations with commas in a string as a value for the add config flag, add config option. So let's run this and see what happens. The min in-sync replicas tree will stay, but it should add a cleanup policy compact configuration in this case. So let's this time describe it natively, because I think we got the point. And as you can see, it's normally the defaults for the log cleanup policy is delete, but in this case now it's turned into compact. So how we can delete these? Before that, actually, let me show this to you. So with this native description, if you don't set an entity name, it should return all the topic configurations. So let's first, if you like, create another topic. It works all the same for all the entities. So let's create another topic, which is called my topic 2. Let's say I will change this topic name into my topic 2. So now I have topics. Now I should have 2 topics, my topic and my topic 2. So what I will do is I will run this command without any entity name, and we should see 2 topic configurations listed. So yeah, as you can see, we have the topic configuration for my topic 2, and we have the topic configuration for my topic here. So what about deleting the configurations? In order to delete configurations, we use Kafka configs alter delete config. So let me copy this in order to be fast. So you should use a delete config option and put the configuration keys with commas you want to delete, and the others are the same: the entity type topics, entity name my topic. So let's try this and see what happens. Okay, so let's run the describe command with the entity name, because we only need to see the my topics configuration. And we shouldn't see any min in-sync replicas or cleanup policy in this case. Yeah, as you can see, we are now in the initial state. We just have the initial configurations for the relevant topic. Let's check its Kubernetes natively. So as you can see, we just have 2 configurations for this. So let me check if we have anything else. Okay, now we can continue with the user configuration. So in order to set any user configuration, now we have to create a user. So let's see if we have a user. Kafka minus my cluster. And as you can see, we don't have any current users in the cluster. So let's create one. We can create users from the previous videos. You can check it. We can create users with KFK users create username my user. We are creating a user called my user with the authentication type TLS. This is mandatory to set an authentication type in Strimzi Kafka CLI. And in the Kafka namespace and in cluster my cluster. So let's create this user. Okay, now we can describe the user. I will just change the create part to describe. Yeah, we have the user, and we don't, as you can see, we don't have any current quotas, etc. We only have the authentication type TLS. So normally in native Kafka, when you use the Kafka configs shell script, it allows you to set the authentication like Scramsha 256 or 512. So in this case, we set the authentication type in a different way, in a more Strimzi and Kubernetes way, because in the user custom resource, we have a specific, different section for that. So the other parts, the quota parts, can be handled by both the users command. As you can see, we can set quotas like this, or we can delete quotas like this, or we can use Kafka configs and manipulate the quotas of the user. So in this case, we will be setting some quotas, Kafka configs, let's say alter and it will be the same add config. In this case, we are adding two quota configurations for this user, a request percentage and a consumer byte rate. And as an entity type and an entity name, we will be setting entity users for the entity type, and for the entity name we have to set my user because it's the user's name, and the rest will be the same. It will be in the my cluster and Kafka namespace. So let's alter this. As you can see, the pattern is always the same. You alter the configuration. You use add config in order to add a configuration to any entity, and you add your configurations. If you have more than one configuration, you have to set it with comma, and you have to set the entity type and the entity name, and rest will be handled by the Strimzi Kafka CLI and Strimzi itself. So yeah, as we already talked about, you can also use a KFK users alter. There's a escape mark at the front, so it won't be executed. So we can configure the quotas just like this. Okay, quota, the request percentage, another quota, consumer byte rate. So it will change the same configuration. So let's describe our user the same way. This time we will be using the describe option as always, and for the entity type we will be setting users, and for the entity name it's the same, my user. So let's first describe it non-natively, Kubernetes natively, not Kafka natively. So as you can see, we have the quotas set here under spec. We have quotas and we have the quota values, the consumer byte rate and the request percentage. So let's do the same with native flag and see what happens. Yeah, as you can see, we have the configuration for the user principal, my user, and we have the specific configurations that we just set. So what about deleting these configurations? We already added configuration, more than one. In this case, we already described it natively and non-natively. And let's delete these configurations. And it will be just the same with the topics. So just like the same with the topic configuration deletion, it's the same. We have delete config and we have the keys that we want to delete, the configuration keys, and entity type, entity name. The others are the same, so let's delete this. And read it to effect, and let's describe it. And see, we don't have any configuration. That's why we got the empty response. And let's check it with the Kubernetes custom resource. So yeah, as you can see, we don't have any quotas. The quotas are empty. So I think we are done with the user configuration. Now let's continue with the broker configuration. So let's add, since we have already our cluster and already we have our brokers, let's first start to add a configuration that is not dynamic. So in Kafka, we have two types of configuration. The ones that are static, so that static configurations are written to the configuration files, and the brokers should be rolled out. But the dynamic configurations that are mostly kept in Zookeeper, if you use any dynamic configuration, you don't have to start the brokers one by one. So let's start with a non-dynamic configuration first. The command is the same. It's kfk configs alter add config. In this case, we are adding the log retention hours. I think it's the same. I think it's the default for the log retention hours. So let's actually change it to something different. So let's change it to, let's say, 84, half of it. So I think it will be 3.5 days. And entity type should be brokers, just like the native command, but it will be affected to the cluster, so it will be affected to all brokers. Strimzi work in this way. And the entity name should be my cluster, that's why. And let's add this configuration and see what happens in the pods of the, yeah, as you can see, we have the terminating, so it started to roll update all of the brokers one by one. Now we have all of our pods, broker pods, as ready. So let's check if our configuration is affected. Yeah. So this is the describe command. It's the same. The entity type is brokers. The entity name is my cluster. So it will return us the custom resource of the cluster, the Kafka cluster. So let's check our configurations, and as you can see, we have the log retention hours as 84. So it is affected, but it's not enough because we have to check it natively. In order to do it Kafka natively, it's the same command. Let me actually show it in the other way. So it's the same command, but if you set the native flag, you should either, as the entity name, you should either not set any entity name, or you should set an entity name that equals the broker ID, just like the native Kafka command. So in this case, I will not set any entity name, so I wanted to list me the configuration of all of the brokers natively. So let's run this. Since this is not a dynamic configuration, we won't be seeing any dynamic configuration, but in the static user provided configurations for the brokers, we will see the out. So as you can see, we have the log retention hours 84. Now let's set a dynamic configuration and see what happens. So let's add the configuration called log cleaner threads, for example. Normally it's 1, but now we are adding it as 2, as you can see here. So we are altering the configuration for the entity type brokers and entity name my cluster, the same. And we are adding this config log cleaner threads, which is a dynamic configuration. So let's add this one as well. Okay, let's check the pods in a very fast way and see if there is any rolling update or not. And as you can see, there is no rolling update. So this means that for the dynamic configurations, we don't need any rolling update, thanks to Kafka itself, and thanks to Strimzi for handling this in an elegant way. So let's describe this time not in a native way, and see if there is the configuration. Yeah, the log cleaner threads is 2 under spec under Kafka config. We can see the config, all of the configurations. So we can see the log cleaner threads here. So let's clear here and add the native. But again, I will remove the entity name because I want to see all of the brokers, and I just want you to see that it is affected to all of the brokers. And as you can see, for the configuration, we have the log cleaner threads here. Log cleaner threads to here. So, and in the static configuration, we can see the log retention hours here. So as you can see, it is listed for 3 of the brokers. Oops. So let me show you that it's just for one broker. So it will be again native, and the entity name should be 0. So it will just return the broker 0. And the overall configurations for all of the brokers, the static user provided configurations. So yes, for the brokers, it's like this, and for deleting any configuration, it's just like the same with the topics and the users. So you have to, in order to delete a set of configurations, you have to define those under delete config option. If you have more than one configuration, you have to separate them with commas. And you have to define the entity type, entity name, and other stuff. So let's delete these configurations. Okay, this time I will just check it natively, but I think we have to first check the pods because it should be rolling up again. Let's describe our configurations with the describe option. First, let's describe it natively. And as you can see, we don't have any dynamic configuration, or we don't have the configuration for log retention hours here in the static configuration. So let's do it for the entity name my master. Let's do it Kubernetes natively and see that we don't have the configurations that we set. So that's all for the configuration management with Strimzi Kafka CLI. So it would be great if you can check this blog post of mine, which is in more detail. So it also shows you how to change the configuration in, for example, let me show it to you. Yeah, for example, if you want to add 2 configurations for the topic, you can also use KFK topics alter and the config option like this. So Strimzi Kafka CLI works in two different ways. In many of the cases, not only for configurations. For example, in this case, you can both use KFK configs or KFK topics. You have a entity called topic, so you can start with the topics and use the KFK topics command, alter the topic and add or delete any configuration, and you can use delete config like here. And it's not just for the topics, for the users it's the same. You can add quotas like this, or you can just use KFK configs. For the brokers it's the same. You can use KFK clusters and again config option to add a configuration, or delete config option to delete a configuration. So Strimzi Kafka CLI, as I said, works in both ways, both from the perspective of a hardcore Kubernetes or Strimzi user, or a Kafka guru, from the perspective of a Kafka guru that is familiar with the native Kafka shell commands. So I will appreciate if you can check my blog posts, and I hope it will be beneficial for you. So thanks for watching my video, and please check the other videos in the YouTube playlist, which is all about Strimzi Kafka CLI, creating topics, creating clusters, bootstrapping Strimzi in Kafka in Kubernetes with Strimzi in just 5 commands. So please check all the videos in the playlist, and see you next time.